Hey guys, just want to take a second to show you guys how I'm going to wire up the air compressor for the air shifter. I'm going to try to do my best to do some little cuts and edits and not make this too long, but I think I said I was just going to wire it straight to the battery and have it on a switch. I've since changed that and kind of researched a little bit more on the pressure switch, and I'll go over that all once we get started. I did want to work on the swing arm this weekend, but I'm still waiting for the axle, and I really don't want to tear this down and have it down for, more than a month if it takes a minute to get the 20 mil axle. So here, this will be a cool kind of share of knowledge and just kind of explain how this is all going to work electronically. So let's get going. So for pretty much every wiring project, whether it be for the motorcycles or for the automotive stuff, this is like the basic tools I use and pretty much what I like to have on anything electrical that I'm gonna do. So I've got a motorcycle battery that's just a 12 volt battery that I had laying around. It's just nice to test some things, test out relays and lights to make sure they work before you actually get them on the bike. And I've got a soldering iron, solder, got a wire crimper, a wire stripper, just a pair of dikes, and a test light. So again, this is just basic tools for pretty much any wiring project you're gonna get going on with any sort of motorcycle or automotive. Next, we're gonna go over pretty much all the wiring and bits and pieces I'm gonna actually be using on this. So here we go. Okay, so on the material side of things, I've got a couple rolls of 18 gauge wire and 16 gauge wire. I always like to have heat shrink. This just happens to be a kit off Amazon. It's always nice to have. Sometimes I'll use this liquid electrical tape. I don't think I'm gonna use it on this, but that's one thing I use sometimes to make sure I get a good seal, especially if something's gonna be out in the weather. I'll put the liquid electrical tape and then I'll actually heat shrink on top of that. I've got some male and female connectors, a couple of ring terminal connectors, and then I've got a 4-pin relay. I've got a waterproof wiring connector. Not sure if I'm gonna use that yet, but I've got it. I've got a fusible link. This one just happens to have a 30 amp fuse in it. Then I've got some zip ties, and if you've watched my last video, this is actually the momentary push switch that comes with the MPS air compressor. I've got that. I don't think I'm going to use it since I'm going with the pressure switch, and this just has 18 gauge wire attached to it, so just got to wire that in. And then for the last thing, I'm probably going to test this with my air compressor. So I just picked up a 1/4 inch MPT to just air hose nipple end. So I'm just going to put the pressure switch in there, test it, make sure it's working how I expect it to work and how it's labeled for the 110 cutoff and the 145 cutoff, and then the 110 switch on. Next, go over the wiring diagram. All right, guys, here's a wiring diagram of how I'm gonna wire in the air compressor, the pressure switch, and a relay, so that all of this works without me having to press a button or even flip a switch. So essentially, instead of going just positive on a switch to the air compressor and having a ground to the air compressor, this is all gonna do it automatically from using a 12 volt keyed on power source or switch and the pressure switch from MPS, I should say. So essentially, all I'm doing is a positive wire with a fuse to pin 30, and then this is the part of the relay that actually switches the power. It jumps from 30 to 87. So going out of the relay at pin 87 is the positive on the air compressor. On the ground side of the air compressor, just going to the battery, and then obviously the battery's stock ground is there from the factory. So the pressure switch, I am using that as a ground trigger. So when the pressure switch, I don't know if you guys seen my other videos, but pressure switch kicks the pump on at 110 psi and cuts the pump off at 145 psi. So that's my ground trigger. So that is all that's being used for. There's no power that goes to or from the pressure switch at all, and that goes to pin 85. And then here at the 12 volt keyed on power source, so I think I'm gonna use something like the running lights. So there's a factory R7 connector that is the stock running lights on the R7. So I think I'm gonna plug into that, because how the keyed on power works is exactly how it sounds. But so with the key off, no power, obviously. Key on, you have a 12 volt supply, and these are just trigger wires. So I'm running 18 gauge wire, which is pretty thin. And then for the positive wire and the negative wire, both, well, the batteries already got it, and the ground for the compressor is 16 gauge. So this is 100% hands off. It's gonna do everything by itself, essentially. The nice thing about using the 12 volt keyed on power, because I was gonna put maybe a switch there so that I could, you know, if I'm not gonna use it, I could switch it off, so that it didn't run the battery down when you walk away from the bike, say if you had a pressure leak or something. Well, the 12 volt keyed on, if you have the key on, then it's got power to the relay, and it'll do it automatically based off the pressure switch. And then when you walk away, say the pressure, you have another, a small leak again, the pressure switch gets below 110, well, you still don't have the key in it, so it's not gonna kick the pump on. So just a cool little way to use a relay. These are super convenient. You can do a lot of stuff with relays. Sometimes it can be complicated, but every time I got to use one, or I want something to be triggered by something else, I just get on the internet, remind myself how these work, all the pins, and then I'll print myself out one, or I'll have a YouTube video up while I'm doing it. But this is gonna be pretty nice when it's all said and done. It's gonna take a little bit of time, but yeah, so here we go with the old time lapse. right, guys, there's the completed wiring. Still need to clean it up and everything, but this is just kind of roughly where the wires are gonna go, roughly set up. So I did actually tap into the running light on the headlight, being that I already had tapped into that when I modified the housing on the Grom. So switch power is coming from the headlight running light. Then I have my power cable coming from the relay to the air compressor. And then I have the air compressor grounded to the battery. I'm sorry, that's the positive. It comes up and gets grounded to the battery. Then I have, then on the relay side, I have my fused wire for the power in. And then I have one wire that it's all messy, and I left a lot there because I don't know how much I'm gonna need for the swing arm, how I'm gonna hide it, but have one wire from the relay coming to the pressure switch. And then the pressure switch has a wire that runs back to, it's not even tucked in at all, but it runs back to the battery. So no chassis grounds, everything's grounded to the battery. I haven't tried this yet, so hopefully this is uneventful and it just works. It might be a little noisy, but before I do that, I suppose I can show that I just have some quarter inch push lock tubing into a push lock to 1/4 inch MPT, and that's just to the pressure switch. So this little line is acting like the tank right now, just for testing purposes. So when I key the power on, the pump should come on, and then once it sees 145 PSI in this line, then it should shut off. Fingers crossed this works. Here we go. Well, I guess it did work. That must just be super fast. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna try maybe to put a longer line in there and see if that'll do it for us. Give me 1 sec. Okay, attempt number 2. So I just added all the push lock line that I had. Maybe it'll hold a little bit more volume, but then I've just got an air chuck on a T to kind of release the air so we can test the pressure switch all together. Let's try it one more time. All right, T on. Boom, that's awesome. All right, that's 145 PSI on the line, and then I can let out some of the air. So that's not much volume at all if it's coming in at 110. Probably put a gauge on this and check it out, but that's it, guys. It's not nearly as loud as I thought it was gonna be, honestly. That is so cool. Perfect. Maybe to finish off this video, I will put it on the actual quick shifter just to test it. I know this isn't much volume, but that is 100% functionality then. So let's try that, and then I'll cut this video off. Okay, took me a second, got it all turned around. So it's just the push lock fitting. Instead of going to the air chuck, now it's going to the solenoid on this side. This side, the wires are tucked away, so we're gonna click the ignition on and it should pump up and then pressurize. Awesome. All right, first gear. Yep, here goes off the horn button. That's nuts. No way. First, see if I can get it going a little fast, see if it keeps up. That's awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that works. So that's That's freaking sweet. Now that this worked out so well, that it actually functions with just the air compressor and the line. I think I might put this back together, just run a line from the compressor to that T-fitting and have the pressure switch just kind of zip tied up, and have a line that kind of how it's set up now, but less line involved. And Sunday, it's supposed to be a little nice out. I mean, it's Georgia, so freaking never know, but I think I might try to take this out on the street and at least get 2 shifts out of it, maybe a shift. I don't know what pressure it's at right now. I know it's between 110 and 145. I have no idea how much pressure each shift takes, but that is freaking sweet. That's awesome. All right, guys, I'm gonna end this video here. It took a little bit for the wiring. Wiring's not my strongest suit, and I really kind of struggle with it sometimes. And it's just because I get too impatient and I forget things. Like there's a couple wires in there that I forgot heat shrink on. No issue, just put the heat shrink on after like the connectors. It's just a little bit bigger, but everything's waterproof, tight. I just gotta clean it up and put it all back together. And if Sunday is nice, I can actually put the Insta360 there and get an actual view of it working while I'm ripping it. All right, guys. You guys all have a good one.